Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Blue Monday podcast. My name is Mikey Pensy-Smith, and joining me to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Ipswich's finest season of this century, it's a man who played in pretty much every minute of it, making his second appearance on Blue Monday. It's Matt Holland. Thanks for returning, Matt.
No, absolute pleasure. It's always nice to talk about good times. So, no problem at all.
Lovely stuff. And it's over a year since you were last on, can you believe? I think we were in the first lockdown at the time.
Still semi-lockdown.
Yeah. At least we're out on the golf course now. While on the pitch, not much has changed at Ipswich since then, but off it, a fair amount has, right?
Just a bit, yeah. Hopefully we're in for an exciting summer. I know it's been a difficult few years and not where we want to be by any stretch of the imagination. And this season seems again to have tailed off, and it looks like promotion's a distant dream. So roll on the summer, roll on the changes that we hope are going to happen, and let's kick on again next year. That's the plan anyway. Excellent.
And do you expect Paul Cook to be a success, and indeed the owners? I guess it's harder to know if the owners are going to be a success.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Obviously, they're coming in with big promises and said there's going to be changes. So hopefully that's the case and that there'll be money available in the summer. I've always rated Paul Cook as a manager. I know that the results haven't followed since he arrived that he would have liked. And I think he's been very disappointed with that. But hopefully when he has a summer to bring in the players that he wants, then hopefully he can get a squad that's capable of getting promotion back to the Championship at the very least. But I've always rated him as a manager, and hope he's a big success.
Excellent. Before we get on to talking about the 2000-2001 season, just going to throw a quick rumour at you. Apparently John McGreal might be coming in as part of his backroom staff or one of the assistant coaches, of course, a former teammate of yours. Would that be a decent move for the club, do you think?
Saw that, yeah. I mean, great to get John back involved. He's great character. I've got to be honest, when I played alongside John, never really expected him to become a manager, which he did obviously at Colchester. He's quite a quiet character, really, in the dressing room. Yet he was strong character, but he was quite quiet with it as well. So didn't necessarily expect him to be a manager, but he did a decent job at Colchester, and he's someone that I think tactically and he's a very good coach as well, and I think he'd be a good foil for Paul Cook. So if he does come in, I'll be very pleased with that.
Excellent. So with no further ado, let's go back in time, back to a time when Ipswich were very much a class act on and off the pitch. And after a glorious Wembley victory in the playoffs, you were preparing for your first season as a Premier League footballer. Tony Mowbray had retired and become part of the coaching staff full-time. Mick Stockwell had left for Colchester, and one Manuel Thetis had left by mutual consent. The incomings, the headlines were sort of Martin Roycer came in on a permanent deal, as expected. John Scales signed on a free. And on the eve of the opening day, one Herman Hreiderson signed for $4 million. First of all, was it a surprise that George Burley made so few changes? And secondly, how much of a boost was it to see a defender with top flight experience like Herman coming in?
Well, I think it's always a difficult balancing act when a team gets promoted as a manager as to what you do. Now, obviously, you want to try and keep faith with the players that have got you promoted as much as possible and try and give them an opportunity to play at the top level. But at the same time, you also, I think, recognise that you probably need a bit of help as well. So it's a difficult balancing act, I think, as a manager. I think it's important that you do get people through the door. And Herman, I think the thing with George was that he always had a good eye for someone, obviously on the pitch and his ability on the pitch, but also his character and his character off the pitch. And Herman was another one that just fitted into it, really. He was a brilliant person, brilliant character to have about the place. Really quite a lively person, lively personality, and would run through a brick wall for you. And I think when you've got people like that in the dressing room, then you've got a real chance. There was never a feeling of having superstars in our dressing room. It was always about the collective, and Herman just bought into that. So it was, a brilliant, brilliant dressing room that we had, and Herman just added to it.
Indeed, he did. And he went straight into the team for the opening game of the season, which was Tottenham away. Spurs had the likes of Sol Campbell, Darren Anderton, Les Ferdinand, and debutant Sergei Rebrov in their side. And we actually played pretty well, didn't we? We took an early lead through Mark Venus before losing 3-1. Was it a bit of a concern that, having played a pretty good game, we ended up losing by a couple of goals?
I think it was a good lesson for us, really. I think that we quickly realised that you can't make mistakes at that level, because you'll get punished. Because we had played quite well, and yet we come off the pitch losing 3-1. You're thinking, like, how's that happened? And it wouldn't have happened if we'd have played that well in the Championship. We'd have won the game 3-1. Simple as that. But against top quality opposition, it just highlighted that if you make mistakes, then you're going to get punished for it. And it gave us confidence. Don't get me wrong, that we could play at that level, because you're playing a good team, a good atmosphere, and it was a decent performance, but it was also a good lesson for us, I felt, early on.
Indeed. And the first home game, of course, was Manchester United at home, a memorable night for everyone, especially Fabian Wilness. What was it like going toe-to-toe against that famous Manchester United midfield? Because they all played that night: Beckham, Keane, Scholes and Giggs.
It's not a bad midfield, is it? I mean, it's as good as it gets, really, in the Premier League era. It absolutely is. They complement each other well. They've got a bit of everything: pace, trickery, nastiness. They just had absolutely everything. So it's always good to test yourself against the very best. And look, it wasn't that long ago since they'd done the treble either. So it was a pretty special team and squad that they had. I actually got injured in the game. Gary Neville smashed me on I went to school with Gary Neville as well, and he absolutely smashed me just before half time, about the 40th minute. And I tried to come out for the second half and only lasted about 5 minutes. So it was a tough one for me, because I hadn't missed many games, and I hated coming off, and I was really gutted to come off. But at the same time, I think that was the moment that we started to believe that this level we could compete. Gave Fabian a bit of stick that night, I seem to remember, because I think his quote was, "I had a dream." And we all had dreams of playing in the Premier League and playing against the best and scoring in games like that. But I remember giving, well, not just me, but I think everyone gave him a bit of stick for his comment to the press afterwards that he had a dream. But it was a good marker for us, really, against the best team that was around, and the best that you talk about that midfield. It did have everything as well, but I remember being really gutted to have had to come off as well, and it had to be sort of someone I went to school with.
Incredible. But after a dip in the sea at Brightlingsea, you were past fit for the home game against Sunderland the following Saturday, where a 19-year-old Titus Bramble announced himself with an incredible goal. Did he surprise you with how well he took to playing in the Premier League, especially as he'd actually spent much in the previous season injured?
No, not really. I mean, Titus had a lot of good attributes. Strong, fearless, good in the air, good on the ball. What he sometimes was, guilty of, I guess, was lacking concentration and perhaps chasing things that he couldn't necessarily win. And when he had experience around him, he was always better. People who could talk him through the games, and I wasn't surprised because of his attributes. Really, he had everything to play that position and that role. So no, not surprised at all. And it was actually, I'd say, for me personally, it was a difficult start to the season, actually, with that knock I got against United. And that, I remember the fitness test. I think it lasted about 10 seconds, walking out onto the pitch, and George said, "Can you sort of run?" And I sort of had a little hobble and a jog. And "Can you head a ball?" I said, "Well, I can have a go," and a little volley. And he went, "Yeah, you'll be all right." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, fine, I'll give it a go." But yeah, so it was a difficult enough start for me. But no, Titus didn't surprise me at all, because he was he had all the attributes to be a top class player. He looks well there as well, didn't he?
He does, yeah. So yeah, that was I think that was after the Arsenal game. I awarded him the Man of the Match award.
So were you mascot or were you?
I wasn't mascot. I dressed like that for every game.
Did you? Nice.
The company my dad worked for were sponsors of that game against Arsenal. So yeah, I got to meet one of my heroes at the time, which is very exciting. Yeah, I think that kit, not sure that one still fits. So 4 points from 3 games to start. That was followed by narrow defeats against Villa and Leicester before you really announced yourselves with 3 fantastic results. So listen to these results. A 2-1 win at Leeds, a 1-1 draw against Arsene Wenger's Arsenal, and a 3-0 mauling away at Everton, where the home fans applauded you off the pitch. The team was really clicking against top opposition, weren't they, Matt? And not only picking up results, but playing, it seemed, the exact same way that they had done in the previous seasons in Division 1.
Yeah, I think we're just starting to, like you say, get to the level there at that point. And I personally was as well, as I say, because after what I had that knock against United, and I was sort of struggling, I was hobbling through games and not playing at my best. And that run of games, I just felt like I was getting up to speed as well. But they were good, and good performances as well. Leeds, we deserved to win. I think Marcus Stewart scored the goal against Arsenal. And then Everton. I mean, John McGreal. I think John McGreal scored and Marcus got through that day. Again, Marcus's composure though, that was the thing that I guess stood out for some of the goals that he scored. The goal at Everton, when he sort of sits everyone down, I'm sort of trying to kick the ball into the net, go, take your chance, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and he's thinking, but he just had that composure in front of goal. And the Everton game was one where being applauded off the pitch by an opposition set of fans after you've just beaten them 3-0. Normally 3-0, the home team gets booed off, and they've gone sort of 15 minutes before the end, because it's they're absolutely gutted at the result, particularly against a promoted team. But that was a really special moment. To go there and be applauded off the pitch by the home set of fans was pretty special.
Brilliant, yeah. And this is the table at this stage. So Leicester are actually top of the league at this stage, and we climbed into the top half in 9th, and we were all thinking, "Wow, like this is brilliant. We're in the top half of the Premier League. Surely it can't get any better than this."
Well, looking at that as well. I mean, looking at that, we've beaten Leeds away from home. We've drawn with United and Arsenal at home as well. Yeah. So we'd had some good results against the top sides, which gives you real confidence, I think.
Indeed, it does. And yeah, so 7 points from the next 3 games followed before our first defeat in almost 2 months, actually, away at Bobby Robson's Newcastle. How did you find playing against Kieran Dyer for the first time, and how much should he develop since leaving town in '99?
Can't remember it that well, to be honest. I can't remember. I think I was sort of given a more defensive job, I think, that day. Slightly more defensive job, and trying to sort of look after Kieran, because I know he was someone that was obviously very highly rated by George. So yeah, I don't actually remember that game particularly well, if I'm honest. I guess it's selective memory. Remember the good times, remember the wins, but the defeats you sort of try and forget about as quickly as possible. So I remember, actually, I think my dad was at the game, and I remember my dad saying to me afterwards how he couldn't tell who was who on the pitch, because I think the away fans at Newcastle were right up in the gods, if I seem to remember, and the pitch was about half a mile away by the time you get up to your seat in the stand behind the goal. So yeah, I remember him saying afterwards, he said, to be honest, I don't even know how the game went particularly, because I couldn't really see much from where I was.
Yeah, this is when texting and mobile phones were quite new, and I wasn't at that game, but I remember hearing that fans that were there were having to text people that were listening on the radio to ask who'd scored.
Yeah, I think
it was Marcus Stewart for us, and Alan Shearer, I think, scored a couple for Newcastle.
Oh, there's a shot.
Yeah, so he probably remembers it. So would you believe 3 wins on the spin followed? First at home to Charlton, and away at Coventry and Manchester City. And it's probably that win against Charlton, against your future employers, that you most fondly remember, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, I think so, because it's been a while coming. Actually, my first goal in the Premier League. I'd had a few near misses. I think I hit the post against Middlesbrough. I scored in the cup, I think, against Millwall. And I'd actually scored a really important goal for Ireland against Portugal before I actually scored in the Premier League. But that was a big moment for me, I think, personally. Obviously, getting off the mark, but also it was a big win for us as well, because it was 0-0, I think, with about 10 minutes to go. And although we ended up, I think we won the game 2-0 in the end. But I scored with about 10 minutes to go, and which got us off and running. So that was a really good moment. Been a bit frustrated that I hadn't scored up until that point, so it was a bit of weight off his shoulders a little bit.
Excellent. And you twisted the blood of your Republic of Ireland teammate Mark Kinsella as well for
that's
good measure.
Well, because I think if I'm right, we might have been going on international duty. I might have gone on international duty after that game. I've got a feeling. As soon as we played the game, I think that night or the next day I was flying off to Ireland. So. It's always nice to go and sort of rub it in with you, because then Dean Kiley was in goal as well. So he, both of them were there when we met up. So it's nice to be able to talk about that and keep watching it.
Brilliant. And I'll just bring up the table at that stage. So we've climbed into, because you had to finish in the top 3 for Champions League that season, and we're third behind fellow giants Arsenal and Manchester United. Leicester had dropped down to 4th, Liverpool down in 5th. Things were starting to get a little bit exciting at this stage.
Yeah, I don't think we were ever, say at that point, thinking Champions League football. I remember George really just every month we sort of set ourselves a bit of a target. We didn't look too far in advance. We didn't look sort of at that table and start thinking, we're going to finish in the Champions League. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Each month, I think we looked at the fixtures. We sort of set a target actually of points. I remember setting a target of points each month, and looking at the fixtures. And George would say what he thinks we should get. The players would sort of have a bit of a say, well, actually, we think we should get this many points, and we'd sort of come to a decision on how many points we should try and get in that month, that particular month. But that's how I remember that's sort of how we did it that season. We weren't looking too far ahead. We just looked at everyone says a game at a time, but I think we were sort of looking at them in clumps, 3 or 4 little games, 3 or 4, 5 games, and in little clumps, and seeing how many points we could get out of those. But it was obviously a brilliant start to the season for us.
Yeah, so I'm interested to know if that was an open discussion in the dressing room. Can you remember if any of the players were quite pragmatic about how many points we were going to get? I could imagine Jamie Scowcroft maybe being a little bit more pragmatic than, say, Jim and Jilton.
Half glass half full and glass half empty. Yeah, there's a few sort of different opinions, I guess, of how many points we might get. It wasn't a dressing room thing. It was like a meeting room thing that we used to. I remember sort of sitting in the. It was at the ground, and we used to do it quite a bit. There were a few who would say, "Hang on a minute, I think we're sort of trying to punch above our weight here, and perhaps we only get 3 points this month." Or, but I think it was always good to be ambitious, really. Set yourself, big targets, and try and say, well, actually, I think we can win there. I don't think there's nothing to fear. And so, like you say, there was a few in the dressing room who probably would have said, no, we weren't getting in there, or we won't get in there. But Jim and Jill thought we'd win every game. It was just
as long as he was playing.
As long as Jim was playing, if Jim was playing, he thought we'd win every game, and he'd be man of the match. And just different characters, isn't it?
Lovely stuff. So actually, after that little run, we lost at home to Derby. I think Rory Delap scored for them. But next up was many people's favourite game of the season, Matt, and some people's favourite game ever, people of a certain vintage. A 1-0 win away at Anfield thanks to a superb goal from Marcus Stewart. Can you remember what was the game plan that day, and how much of a buzz was it to go there and get a win against a brilliant Liverpool side who ended up winning about 4 cups that season?
Yeah, I don't remember necessarily the game plan. I remember, again, Marcus just taking his time and gently rolling it in as usual, not being fazed too much by what was going on. It's an iconic ground, isn't it, Anfield? and the "This is Anfield" sign as you're walking out the dressing room, and all those things that come with it, and the fans in the corner to your left as you walk out, because I think the tunnel's quite close to that corner, as always close to that corner rather than the middle at Anfield. But I don't remember a particular game plan. I think we were just in a position where it didn't matter who we were playing and where we were playing, we felt confident. And I think that's, the key really, not going anywhere and being overawed, not being overawed by names or team sheets. I think that was crucial at that stage as well, because I think it's quite easy to go somewhere and you look at a team sheet and you look at some of the names, you think, but at the end of the day, it's just another person you're up against, and it's another challenge, another fresh challenge. I always used to like that challenge really of testing yourself against people who you're coming up against, certain individuals. I'm trying to think who would have played. Maybe was Gerrard playing, or was he probably a bit young? Maybe Gerrard.
Yeah, no, Gerrard would have been around, and Danny Murphy. Maybe Patrick Berger, Littmanen. So those type of players.
But they're and we mentioned the United game earlier as well. That coming up against Roy and Scholes, Nicky Butt, people like that, just testing yourself against the very best. Really, it was always a challenge, and I think we just saw it like that really. And because we were confident going into matches, there was never any fear of what they might do or how they might play. It was more about trying to impose ourselves as well, and trying to pass the ball, which we'd always done. That was one of George's big things in training. We used to do a passing drill every day. It used to drive players mad at times because it was the sort of quite monotonous, and it was quite the same thing over and over again. But it was something he'd done under Bobby Robson, and it was something that obviously paid huge dividends with that team. And he just had a thing about us, passing the ball, and we used to do drills every day in training. So it was never a case of worrying too much about the opposition. It was more about imposing ourselves and our game on whoever it was that we came up against.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did Burley's training evolve at all when we were in the Premier League? I was going to ask if there was a little bit more attention to the opposition, but by the sounds of it, it was just carry on as usual.
I don't think so. I think he had his ways, and that was it really. So we worked heavily on passing drills, which we did a lot. We worked heavily on team shape as all. Something that they were the sort of two things that George really worked hard on. So I know we were quite a settled team anyway, really, who knew each other's jobs. But we also, you knew your own role, but you knew what everyone else was doing in the team as well. And that they were the two things in training that George was really, heavy on. Make sure that we passed the ball and make sure our shape's good, and we did it. We did that a lot.
Yeah, and it was mostly 4-4-2, wasn't it? I think we played wing backs quite a bit at the start with you, Jim Jilton, and Jermaine Wright as a midfield three. But then as the season went on, he seemed to have faith in the 4-4-2, didn't he?
Yeah, I think, again, different formations, different personnel. I guess the maybe early on he was looking at it thinking we needed to be a bit more pragmatic, be a bit more with three at the back. But as the season went on and we started to win games, we became a bit more adventurous, I guess, in the way we played, and a bit more open. Maybe sometimes, but I don't. It's not necessarily always about formations, and it's about the players. A lot of it as well, and I think we were capable. We're well capable of playing both systems, and it wasn't a problem to change from one to the other from week to week. That wasn't a problem either.
Excellent, and a real change of pace here. But just going back to that Liverpool victory. The level of football that I've always played, Matt, if you have a big victory like that, you have to make sure that you all go out for a few drinks after. Can you remember, did that happen much during that season? Do you have any big nights out, be it up north or in London or anything?
I don't, 20 years ago.
You don't remember your nights out from 20 years ago?
No, I don't, to be honest, no. We would have done, because we were quite a close group, close unit. I mean, I lived in Colchester, so perhaps didn't necessarily go out as much as some of the others who lived more locally in Ipswich. But yeah, we would have gone out as a team, and maybe even for dinner sometimes as well, just to keep that closeness. And it was the spirit about the group was always top class anyway. I used to look after the fine money, because if someone was late or whatever, we used to have to fine Kitty. And so for nights out and maybe trips away, if we got knocked out the cups or something, we used to go to Tenerife or wherever it might be for a few days warm weather training. I'd have the Kitty and treat the lads to dinner and a few beers and stuff. So we were always pretty close, really, in that respect. But I don't remember any specific nights out. I mean, I remember one trip to Tenerife. I don't even know if it was this season or not, but we were out for dinner and I had the fine Kitty, so I was paying the bill. But as we were sort of ordering, I remember Mark Venus asking if anyone wanted to share the Chateaubriand, and sort of I'm fine. I've gone fish or something, and Tony Mowbray was next to us. But from the end of the table, David Johnson shouted out, "Don't worry about it, Vino." He said, "We've got loads of money in the kitty. Just order a bottle for yourself." that you can imagine the stick that he got for that, and that is a true story as well.
Brilliant. Great stuff. I was gonna ask who you took the most money off when you were fine master.
Crikey. Well, blimey, who would have been late quite a lot? I'm trying to think.
Can I throw in a couple of names?
Yeah,
just based on pure assumption.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Martin Reusser and Marcus Stewart.
No, I don't think they were. We were quite professional. I know people have an idea of what people are like sometimes, but we were quite professional. I don't remember too many people being late. At Charlton, Carlton Cole was always late. I mean, he was late every day. Mervyn Day used to be at the gate waiting for him with his hand out every day because he was late every single day. But at Ipswich, I don't remember anyone desperately being late all the time. Don't remember.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of it is it's a respect thing, isn't it? And
yeah, well, I guess
that's a lot of respect for the management.
And that's the point of having a fine system, really, as well. And perhaps the players policing it, then it becomes a bit more important, doesn't it? That you don't let your teammates down as well. So, but also it's important that someone is late, so you can have a good night out in the can as well.
Great stuff. So yeah, after that Liverpool victory, a 3-1 win at home to Southampton ensured we'd go to Old Trafford, and I think this was for the first time since our infamous 9-0 defeat, and we were third in the table. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer scored twice in a 2-0 win for United. How did you find it on a personal level playing at Old Trafford, as you were a childhood United fan? Indeed, you went to games there with your dad, didn't you?
Yeah, I think my dad came to that game actually as well. I don't know really. Again, it's another game really. It doesn't matter who you supported or who your team was really. Once you came up against them, it was you against them, and you have to win the game. Now, of course, you're up against the top quality side, and it's not always possible. I'm trying to think. I did get a man of the, because they used to do at Old Trafford. They used to do a man of the match for the away team as well as the home team. I think it might have been actually a different game. I think it might have been beat 4, and Paul Scholes was their man of the match, and I was our man of the match, and I was so embarrassed going in. I mean, it went into the lounge with Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes picking up his award, and they just won 4-0, and we got our away player of the match, and I had to walk up and get this bottle of champagne. I've still got the bottle actually, but I remember feeling pretty embarrassed that we'd been spanked 4-0 and picked up that award. But no, because I think we've beaten United as well in the cup, haven't we? My first season in '97. Do you remember Tirico scored?
Yeah, brilliant night that one. Yeah, Matthew scored as well.
That's right, great night at Portman Road, and we beat them 2-0. So was it 2-0? I'm sure it was 2-0.
2-0, yeah.
So yeah, it didn't matter who I was up against really. Although, funnily enough, over my career, I didn't have a great record against United. I think that game there I've just mentioned was perhaps the only time I ever got a result against them.
Yeah, you mentioned that 4-0, Matt. That was the following season. I'm sure one of our viewers and listeners might be able to help out with this, but I'm sure I read somewhere that Jim Jilton completed more passes than the Manchester United midfielders did in that game. So we actually, I think we might have even edged the possession, but United had Andy Cole and
Cole, Sheringham, Solskjaer.
Solskjaer. Yeah, it's absolutely ludicrous front line. Obviously, ours was brilliant as well, but exactly. maybe we had a couple of injuries that day.
Who would you swap? I mean, you wouldn't swap any of them, would you?
No, definitely not. So that defeat saw us drop to 5th, but we were soon back in 3rd, thanks to a comeback draw against Chelsea on Boxing Day and a 3-0 victory over Tottenham just before New Year's. I think Alan Armstrong had signed for Middlesbrough by this point and had already scored a couple, but a Premiership goal had unfortunately eluded David Johnson. What was the feeling in the squad when he said that he was leaving in January? Because he'd been the talisman in the team for so long, hadn't he?
Yeah. It was tough for John, wasn't it? That little spell, really, because I mean, coming off in the playoff final as well, it was sort of a tough time for him, really, because he had, I mean, for a number of years, the goals that he scored, and he was always so sharp and brilliant for his size. What a great leap he had! I mean, he was it bounced, didn't he, when he jumped the ball? Great pace and good finisher as well. But he had a tough time, really. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you get frustrated at not playing. You manager has to make those decisions as well. George had a good ability, I think, of selling players to buy players as well over his time at the club. Even in the summers where we'd had a few near misses, it was a case of selling a player to bring a couple in or whatever it might be, and he always had that good ability, really, to do that. But it's tough, it's always tough losing one of your teammates, and particularly, one who's been integral to a lot of the success that you've had. That was tough.
Indeed, it was. I think he'd scored in the Worthington Cup, which I'll now touch upon. Obviously, we're mostly reflecting on the Premier League season, but we still managed to make we came very close to making a League Cup final, didn't we? So
pitch at Birmingham.
Yeah, so we won away at Arsenal on route to the semi-final. I think we beat Birmingham at home in the first leg 1-0. But yeah, as you mentioned, beating away at Birmingham.
Did we beat Man City? Beat Man City as well on the way, didn't we? Did we beat? I think. That was
a game that had to be played.
That's right.
Twice, didn't it? Because of the rain.
Graham Poll was the manager. We'd gone 1-0 up, and I remember the City players desperately trying to get it called off when we'd gone 1-0 up, and then they equalised after about 25 minutes, and as soon as they equalised, that was it. He got us off. He had an excuse then to get us off, but while we were still winning, I was in his ear saying, "No, you can't call it off. It's absolutely fine. We're 1-0 up." And as soon as City equalised, he got us off the pitch.
Nightmare, but shows the character in the team that you managed to go up there again, go through it all again. I think it was lashing down with rain the second time round as well, and Mark Vina scored. Brilliant memories. But it wasn't a good memory, the Birmingham City game. So what are your memories of? I know you say that you don't necessarily remember all the small details, but can you remember what the atmosphere was like that night, and also the pitch? How much of a regret was it for you that we didn't manage to get to that Cardiff final?
Yeah, it was a of course it's a regret. Crikey, I mean, get to the semi-finals. Once you got to that stage, you want to go all the way. Pitch was horrific. I remember the pitch being awful. It was like a mud bath, really. They were obviously they were up for it. Of course, they were up for it. The crowd were up for it. You could sense there was a good atmosphere about the place. And they did, they were very physical with us, absolutely. We got turned over badly, really, didn't we? I think it was 4-1 maybe?
4-1 after extra time, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so, but yeah, it's a gutter, really, when you get that far and you got to that stage. I mean, we'd obviously done it a few times in the playoffs where we got to the semi-finals and not quite got over the line as well. So it was, but it's heartbreaking when you get that far and then don't quite make the next step and get to the final. So, yeah, it was a big regret really that we didn't hold on, because we've won the first leg as well, 1-0, I think.
Yeah, we had at home. Yeah, Marcus Stewart. Yeah. Though, does it frustrate you that Ipswich are so poor and show such a lack of respect for the cup competitions these days?
Well, I think that you can go hand in hand and have a good cup run as well as going well in the league as well, and some, I think they go hand in hand. That confidence, that belief. If you're having a good run in the cup, you can transfer that form into the league at times as well. I guess you're talking to someone who's a bit old school, really, in the respect of wanting to play every game. And nowadays, it tends to be more of a squad game. Players tend to get rotated, rested. Got to be honest, it'd frustrate the hell out of me if manager wanted to leave me out of a cup game here and let it there, and because there's nothing better than playing. That's what you're paid to do, really. That's what your job is to win matches and play matches. And so when I remember George taking me to Crewe once. I think that might have been a cup game, and left me in the stand. I didn't even make the bench, and I was absolutely gutted. I'd have probably gone anyway, even if I was injured and I was not involved. I'd have gone to the game anyway. It's not the fact that I'd gone to Crewe and not been involved. It was the fact that I wasn't able to do anything from sat in the stand. Really, you're kicking and heading every ball. You want the team to win. But you can't affect it when you're in the stand. And, if you're on the bench, at least then you might have a chance of coming on and doing something. So you're talking to someone who's a bit old school in that way, and that if you fit and you just play. I mean, crikey, it's not like you're asking you to play 90 minutes every day of the week. It's and you can get your rest, you can get your recuperation, and I think if you're intelligent and you manage yourself and you manage your body well, it shouldn't be an issue. I was someone that I know I had a few knocks and bruises and had a few days off here and there from training, but a bit of that is managing your body as well, knowing that you need a day off training as well, and knowing that you perhaps need a little bit of a rest, but you're paid to play games and you're paid to win matches. And so I don't get that really. I think if you can't play 55, 60 games a season, I don't know why you can't. I mean, I asked Terry Butcher and people like that who played.
Russell Osman, Russell Osman did an interview with David Diamond for us a few weeks ago, and he famously played 65 games in a season for Ipswich. I think he played every minute. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably about the most I played in the season. If you include internationals as well, I probably played maybe 65, something like that. But I don't see any reason why you can't do that.
It's good to hear it from a player, because us fans we always say we're incredibly frustrated by the apparent lack of fitness levels of some of the current squad. But we'll move on from that and we'll go back in time again. And we actually had quite a slow start.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, far away if you want, Matt.
No. I don't want to upset anyone.
Okay, so I do want you to upset someone. I want to hear you bury Ian Hart now. So we actually had quite a slow start to 2001 in the league, as we lost 4 in 5. One of them a 2-1 home defeat against Leeds, which featured a red card for Marcus Stewart that we're still very, very bitter about. Did you ever take up those theatrics with Ian Hart when you met up on Republic of Ireland duty? Because it was a strong challenge from Stewart, but Hart, I think, still rolling out in front of the cobble stand now.
I can't remember it. I wish I could remember it.
You know what, Matt? It's one of those. Now, when you watch it back now, you can kind of understand what is a red card, but at the time, it just wasn't. Right. And he rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled on the floor and got sent off. But yeah, if you don't remember the incident, you're not going to remember knocking on his hotel room.
I loved Harty. Him and Gary Kelly of Leeds, obviously, they related, and both great characters. He's absolute hammer of a foot, didn't he, Ian Hart? Yeah. Absolute hammer of a foot. He used to wear, I think he was about a size 8, and I think he used to wear size 5 boots.
Oh, really?
Honestly, his feet were like crumpled up like that. unbelievable. He used to squeeze them in, but it was like a rocket of a foot he had.
Yeah.
And scored some unbelievable goals as well for Ireland.
Yeah.
I don't remember the incident because people say these things to me. And there was one. Everyone keeps saying to me about Van Nistelrooy diving for a penalty the year we went down.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like. I sort of scratch my head. It's amazing how my memory, because you're so focused on the game at times that you don't remember things that have happened in the game at times. I remember I'd come in the dressing room afterwards sometimes and I'd look around and I'd go, "Oh, you came on, did you? I don't even remember you coming on." Like about 10, 15 minutes to go, and I'm thinking, "Christ, when did you come on?" Because even when the ball goes dead and you're making a sub, you're still trying to organise things. You're trying to organise people. You may be talking to George and like getting direction for what's happening on the pitch. It's amazing when I come off the pitch sometimes how I had absolutely no idea of what's happened in a game. And people say, "Did you hear the crowd singing that?" And I'm like, not really. The only time I guess I ever really heard the crowd was maybe when it was a corner and I was on the post, maybe, and you're quite close to the crowd. But generally, you don't really hear it. You focus, and everything is so on the game and what's happening that my memory anyway. I mean, some people might be able to switch off and relax more, but for 90 minutes, my mind just is so tunnel visioned and concentrating on it that there's certain things in games I think can't remember that happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I suppose back then as well, Match of the Day probably would have just shown the goals. They wouldn't have gone into great detail about that decision. So it wouldn't have planted in your mind. But yeah, as you can tell, it's the baggage that us fans are still carrying around with us.
I'm going to watch it now. I'm going to come away from this. I'm going to Google it, have a look at it.
Okay, we'll have to dig that clip out for you on Twitter, I think. So that ended up. So that defeat was in a run where we also lost against Arsenal away at Highbury, which featured probably the best individual performance I've ever seen live from a goalkeeper, as Richard Wright made a string of saves. Now, I'm not going to ask you if you remember these saves, but was he amongst the players you knew were going to be right at home in the top level? And ultimately, were you a little bit surprised that he didn't achieve more in the game after leaving town?
It got the move, didn't it? That performance at Arsenal, he was outstanding, absolutely outstanding. He's unbelievable ability, Wrighty. And I think I am a little bit surprised that he didn't do more really, and didn't feature more regularly after he'd made the move from Ipswich. Because even at Everton, he had sort of spells in and out of the team as well. So I am a little bit surprised. And he made his England debut whilst at Ipswich as well, didn't he? Remember Jilton used to take the mickey out of even for his debut because I think he gave away 2 penalties. He might have saved. I think he saved one of them. And if we went on an away trip, I mean, it was like a stuck record really. If we went on an away trip and you put in a video in to watch on the way up to a game somewhere, and Jim would always every week without fail, let's put a comedy on. Let's put Richard Wright's England debut on. It's like a standing joke, really. But he was quality writing. Great guy as well. Such a nice, down to earth, quiet, really quiet. So I mean, not the brightest writer. We used to play Who Wants to Be Millionaire, and he did well to get past the £100 question most of the time. So, but he was a great lad, and I am a little bit surprised he didn't do a bit more.
Yeah, so that defeat at Highbury, I think Thierry Henry came off the bench and scored in that game. So we're just ticking off these big names as we go. That loss, so that after that one, we only lost twice more all season. So let me put my teeth back in. You scored your second of the season in a 2-0 win over Everton before Martin Reusser starred in a 3-1 win over Bradford. Why do you think it took Martin so long to make his mark in the Premier League after such an incredible end to the previous season? And just on that performance against Bradford, what are your memories of that individual performance from Reusser?
Remember him scored a brilliant free kick. I think probably on the chat about who was going to take it. I think I was probably arguing I should be taking it. Jim was probably arguing he was going to be taking it. Martin said, "No, I'm having it." And then he scored. So I remember him scoring a wonderful free kick. I think with Martin, I mean, he had unbelievable ability. really unbelievable ability. But I think there was a case, not a case of him not necessarily doing his defensive work, because he wasn't that, he would do that, but perhaps not as diligently as maybe some others in the team or other players. And again, it's a balancing act that you have to have as a manager. You have to have people who are going to work hard. You have to have people who are 100%ers, but you also have to have a bit of sparkle and a bit of magic at times as well. And I think as players, you understand that. I played with Di Canio at Charlton, and he was someone that sprinkled magic, and Martin had that ability as well. But he had to sort of be a bit more patient and have to wait. He had to wait for his opportunities. A lot of it came from the bench at times as well, which I know frustrated him. Absolutely frustrated him. Some of the things he did in training, some of the goals that he scored, he was a fabulous talent. I mean, crikey, if I'd had a quarter of his talent, I'd be delighted. He was an unbelievably gifted player. But we've all got different attributes, and I think sometimes George felt that we needed to be a bit more workmanlike at times in games, and a bit more organised, and a bit more heart 100% if you like, and getting back into our shape. But I'd be the first to say you need a bit of magic as well. You need people, especially in tight games, to do something that can turn a game, can win you a game. And Martin was one of those. He had as I say, real magic at times.
Excellent. We can't talk about that win over Bradford without mentioning Hreidarson's famous celebration by diving into the North Stand. When did he realise that Mark Birchall got the final touch, or did just nobody tell him?
Not until after the game, I don't think. I think Mark Birchall was probably trying to tell him that he'd got it, and I think Herman was sort of told him, no, it's my goal. Don't even think about taking it away from me. So I don't think he even realised until after the game. And then when the fine came through from the FA, because I think he got a £2,000 fine or something for diving into the crowd. It was brilliant. I mean, it could only be Herman. It was the best celebration you've ever seen, diving into the crowd. Thought he'd scored, and then about 3 days later, he has the goal taken away by the dubious goals panel, and a letter comes through fining him £2,500 or something from the FA. So it was yeah. But I loved Herman. That was just pure him, wasn't it? That I mean, I said run through a brick wall. He just absolute character he had. Yeah. But it was a great story, though, isn't it? Thinking he had scored and then having it taken off. Brilliant.
Brilliant. It could only happen to Herman. So, Chris, we mentioned Mark Birchall had been brought in. Chris Macon was then signed permanently from Sunderland in another shrewd piece of business by George Burley. Looking back, just how impressive was his recruitment alongside David Sheepshanks in that first season up? He seemed to get every decision right, didn't he? Yeah,
he did. I say, I mean, a lot of it was down to ability and the fact that these people could play, but a lot of it was down to the character of people as well. Because it would have been easy for someone to come in and upset it a little bit, and so he got the characters who just fitted into the dressing room, into that ethos, and just straight away fitted into what we were doing. So yeah, it was impressive, and without spending fortunes really as well, which I think is equally impressive really, because it's easy to go out and get your checkbook out and sign Thierry Henry and sign a Roy Keane or whoever it might be. Not that we would have been able to get them, but that's easy because you know what they're like. But sign some of the players that we did who were, I guess, not household names, if you like, and not the biggest names, but they fitted into our system, into our way of doing things, and into our dressing room, which was the most important thing.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, so a defeat at Villa was then followed by another Roycer masterclass in an away win at West Ham, before a frankly ridiculous purple patch in April. I don't know if you and the boys got round in a meeting and said, "Oh, we're going to go for 12 points," I think it was, in April.
What were the fixtures? I'll tell you.
So it started with a 3-0 win away at Southampton, live on Sky.
So Stewie hat-trick.
Yeah. So did this performance for you encapsulate our whole season with goals, entertainment, flair, and of course, clinical finishing from Marcus Stewart as well.
Yeah, that was one of our best performances. I think one of our best performances. But I think we were full of energy. We were a team that had great energy about us. We played high tempo football. weren't afraid. I think, for a team that did like to play, weren't afraid to go from back to front at times as well. I think when you've got someone like Mark Venus, who's got that ability to play those longer balls forward as well. So we mixed our game up, I think, quite a bit. We obviously had the finishing of Stewie. I think Herman set one of the goals up, I seem to remember, at Southampton. Might have been the flick header, I think, from us. So yeah, it did probably encapsulate a lot of the good qualities that we had, and I think, was it on Sky as well, that game?
Yeah, it was another Sky game. Yeah, we seemed to be really good on Sky that season.
Yeah,
up until the Charlton game, which we'll get to in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, so Matt, you're a pundit by trade. You work for TalkSport, Premier League Productions, so you're quite often tasked with trying to work out what makes top players special. So I'm going to ask you, Marcus Stewart didn't have much pace. He wasn't particularly big, and he didn't even have a super powerful shot. Why was he such a success that season against the best defenders in the land? What was it that made Marcus Stewart so special?
Well, I always think that Marcus's best attribute was his movement. He didn't let defenders see the back of his shirt. He was looking at the back of their shirt, if you like. Even if it was just a half a yard, a little drop. Even if you look back to the playoff final goal that he scored, where he just goes half a yard behind the defender, so the defender has absolutely no idea where he is, and then gets across him to get the header into the far corner. That little bit of movement and cleverness about his game was probably his best attribute. He thought deeply about the game. He would talk to players in the team and how he wanted the ball, where he wanted the ball. He said, if I come short, I'm going to spin in behind. If I go long first, I'm going to come to feet. So he used to sort of make sure that his midfield and the service that he was getting was the right service that he wanted and that he needed for him to be successful. And his composure in front of goal as well, because there's so many people who can get themselves into the positions, but once you get into the positions, you've got to be able to go from 100 mile an hour down to sort of 5 miles an hour, compose yourself before making that finishing touch. So whilst as I say, there's lots of people get themselves into those positions, he's someone that had that ability to calm himself down. His heart rate would go down to 50 beats a minute. He just relaxed in front of goal. Some people go to pieces in front of goal. He relaxed in front of goal, knew what he wanted to do. A lot of his goals he passed into the net. He should have played for England, no question. That season, when you looked at some of the people that were getting called up, it was a golden era, don't get me wrong. It was wonderful strikers that England had and playing at the top. But for him to score 19 goals and not even get looked at, I think was a mistake. He should have had the opportunity to play for England.
Yeah, you preaching to the converted here, I think, Matt, with the Blue Monday crowd. Real disappointment that he didn't, and he was decent in the Premier League the next season as well, wasn't he? In a team that struggled, and obviously had his injury problems, but he still scored a few goals then as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he should have had a chance. As I say, he deserved an opportunity to even to go training, let the manager see him, because sometimes it takes that as well. It takes a manager to see someone a bit closer, see them regularly in training, what things that they do, how they go about things. So I think he should have had a call up at the very least, and had the manager look at him.
Yep, I'm in complete agreement there. So we then drew with our Champions League rivals Liverpool. That's an interesting sentence as an Ipswich fan now. And we strengthened our grip on third with 3 straight wins over Newcastle, Middlesbrough and Coventry. So at this stage, the table's looking something like that. We were third. Obviously, Liverpool had a couple of games in hand, but we had the points on the board. Just another fantastic little run of form, wasn't it? Alan Armstrong scoring that double away at Middlesbrough. Do you remember that one?
Ish. Yeah, I do remember that because obviously that's his hometown as well, Middlesbrough, isn't it? So big one for him to go there and score a couple. It's nice looking at that table, isn't it? It's just getting goosebumps looking at that table. It was like an eternity ago, and I guess in lots of ways it is really 20 years is a long time. But it's nice looking at that and seeing some of the names below us as well. It's that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'd say six of the traditional giants in the top six. For me, we haven't mentioned your midfield partner, Jim Jilton, too much yet. How much pleasure was he getting from proving to everyone that he was very much a Premier League player and a good one at that, as he'd had to drop down to the First Division from Sheffield Wednesday a couple of years earlier?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the success that we had in the team was partnerships, and two centre halves, fullback and wide player, two centre forwards, and I guess in midfield as well. The basis of a good partnership is when you complement each other well, that your attributes aren't the same, that you do things different, and as a pair, you cover all bases, if you like. Jim had the famous saying of let the players play and let the runners run, and he used to say to me, "You're the runner, I'm the player. You do all my running, and just give me the ball." And it worked between us because we were different. We didn't play the same at all. We had the same attitude and the same will to win and the same determination to be successful. But on the pitch, we had totally different characteristics, and between us, we were a good pair. But Jim was brilliant. I mean, he demanded the ball the whole time, wanted it, even if he was marked, even if he wasn't playing particularly well. He never hid, always wanted it, always wanted to take responsibility, always wanted to try and affect the game, always wanted to try and impose himself. But yeah, he was. It's a pleasure playing alongside him, really. I mean, we sometimes it just clicks between two people, and myself and Jim, I think, would both sort of say the same, really, that we had a good partnership together. And we shouldn't forget, like Jermaine Wright, and he was another one who was, I think, a vastly underrated player as well. He didn't necessarily get the credit that he deserved because he was a fabulous footballer. So there's other players who could play in that position as well. But obviously, I guess most people would remember myself and Jim mostly, and we did have a good partnership.
You certainly did. So we'll just bring up that league table again, because I'm going to ask you about the next game, which was against Charlton. Had the Champions League started to be talked about at this stage in the dressing room? And if so, do you think it maybe had a bit of a negative effect, or were we just a little bit unlucky on the night? Watching back the highlights at the time, this is what it was like being an Ipswich fan at the time. I remember being really disappointed, thinking we might have to settle for UEFA Cup after that one, which is just ludicrous, isn't it? But were you just a little bit unlucky on the night, or had it maybe crept into the psyche a little bit that we were on the cusp of a Champions League spot?
I don't think we did. I don't remember thinking Champions League. I don't seem to remember that ever being in our heads. It was just trying to win games. I don't honestly remember us sort of getting carried away really by it and what we were doing and where we were going with it. I just don't seem to remember that at all. And I can't even remember the Charlton result. You're talking about the Charlton game. What happened?
Oh, okay, yes, it was a 2-1 defeat. Royce has scored a cross free kick, and I think we were away. I think Svensson scored early for them. Royce equalised, and then Richard Rufus scored the winner. And looking back at the highlights, we had loads of chances to equalise, and we're just a little bit unfortunate on the day, I think.
And what were our last two games? So
the last two games, Matt, were Manchester City at home was the last home game, and that was that was the following Tuesday, and then on the following Saturday or Sunday it was Derby. But yeah, let's talk about that City game, Matt, because we had to win to keep our chances of finishing the Champions League alive. They had to win to keep their chances of staying up. You scored the equaliser in that game. I think Gota maybe scored to open the scoring. You equalised, and then Martin Royce popped up with a header late on, which seemed ridiculous. How special was that night? As a fan, it was a little bit of a flashback to the Bolton game in the playoffs, in that all of that late drama, packed house, really exciting end.
Remember that being a big atmosphere, really good atmosphere. In the build-up, I think Joe Royal had been talking about me as well, saying how he wanted to sign me. It was ironic, actually, in them sort of coming to Ipswich not long afterwards, saying how he tried to sign me or something, but I wasn't available. And so in the build-up, I remember Joe saying that, and then obviously we scored and helped send them down, if you like. But I remember the atmosphere that night being really special, really, really special. That noise that evening was incredible. And that was, I guess, keeping our hopes alive. I mean, we still had to, even if we'd won the last game though at Derby, I don't think we would have qualified, would we, for the Champions League?
No. So it was to keep it going into the final day, really, and yeah, on the final day, I think Liverpool would have had to have lost or dropped points at Charlton, and Leeds would have had to have lost, but they both ended up winning.
That's right.
And yeah, only the top three went into the Champions League then. But yeah, what it did mean was that we still had something to play for on that final day at Derby. And that was a special day for me. That one. I got on the...
Were you mascot?
Again, Matt, I wasn't mascot. No. That's just how I dressed for games. Still do sometimes.
Nice.
So I got on the pitch that day and scored against Rami the Ram, the Derby mascot. Sent the keeper the wrong way, celebrating in front of the town fans. So
did they just? How did you manage that? Did they just pick people out randomly?
Pick people out, and I suppose due to what I was wearing, maybe that helps me out. But it was fancy dress that day.
Oh, that was the fancy dress. So I mentioned Derby earlier. That was the fancy dress day.
Yeah, and my dad my dad was dressed as a Viking, I think, and got on the local news. So yeah, big day for the.
Talk me through your penalty then.
So the goalkeeper is a giant ram with gloves on, and I think a couple of Derby kids had missed before me, and I just thought I'll give him the eyes, and then I tucked it bottom left, I think, and then I was milking it in front of the Ipswich fans who cheered me. So yeah, that was as close as I ever got, Matt, to scoring for Ipswich. But yeah, let's talk about that feeling at the end, I suppose, because it ended 1-1. Can you describe the feeling of pride at the end, celebrating in front of the Ipswich fans, knowing that you'd pulled off one of the most surprising Premier League campaigns by any team ever?
You know, it was obviously a good feeling that the season had gone well and we'd done what we'd done. But actually, I remember feeling a bit gutted going back to the dressing room. I remember feeling a bit gutted going back to the dressing room and thinking that we haven't qualified for that. Because I remember coming off thinking, like, what's happened? What are the results? And, you know, I guess hoping that they'd probably won, because even if we'd have won, we wouldn't have done it. I was probably hoping that they'd won, knowing that we hadn't blown it by drawing the game. But I remember being a bit gutted, actually, that we hadn't sort of qualified for the Champions League, because we'd had such a good season and we'd been pushing for that position all season. I thought, so yeah, I don't remember being overly jubilant in the dressing room. I think I remember being a bit gutted that we hadn't sort of quite got over the line and finished third. But
I think we look back on a fantastic achievement this year. It's been a great season to reach Europe in our first season back in the Premiership. Finishing fifth is a great achievement and one we're very proud of.
I mean, it's habits, and we've been working hard with the squad of players for the last 5 or 6 years. There is a belief, we encourage them to get the ball down and knock it about, but there are quality as well. But it's like anything, we've got to keep improving. They've been absolutely magnificent this season, but it's going to be a big challenge next.
Look at that table now. Just having a look at it now.
Yeah.
We'd love to see that now, wouldn't we?
We'd love to see fifth place in League One, Matt. So
we will. Don't worry. We will. Believe me. We'll be back at some point.
So, Matt, was it? This is maybe me being a little bit sentimental, but was it extra special when it did sink in that you'd finished fifth and you went away on your holiday a few days later. Did it feel extra special that you'd done it alongside the likes of Richard Wright, Wilness, Venus, Clapham, Jilton, Scoey, who'd all tasted so much disappointment alongside you in the playoffs before getting to the top flight?
Definitely. I mean, that was the big ethos, really, and the big thing for me was that we were a team. We weren't about individuals. We weren't about any of that. It's nice when you've sort of gone on a journey. You've knocked on the door. We got close a number of times. We've had a lot of setbacks. I think throughout someone's career, throughout anyone's career, you're going to have more lows than you are highs. I don't care who you are, unless maybe you're Ryan Giggs and Roy Keane, who's got however many trophies that they've got. But generally, throughout the course of your career, you're going to have more setbacks and hurting times than you are going to have good times. So to be able to have done that with that group of players, with those people, special friends, we had a Zoom recently to celebrate 20 years of the Wembley. Got everyone involved in that. To be able to do it with people that you got close to, that you trusted, that you take in the trenches with you, absolutely every day of the week. It makes it even extra special, really, to be able to celebrate with a group of people that were special people, special footballers, but special people, and I think that's the most important thing.
And did any of them, maybe the more underrated players like your Jermaine Wrights and Jamie Claphams, did any of those players surprise you by how well they stood up to the test of playing the Premier League, or did you feel they'll be good enough?
Definitely. No one surprised me at all. No one surprised me. We're all good players. You don't get to that level. You don't get to that position by not being a good player. You've also got to have a good character to do it as well, because I don't care what anyone says. There is pressure. There is pressure on it. There's pressure on being a footballer. There's pressure on performing every week. I mean, you don't there's not many jobs that you get assessed each week by 25,000 people and given your opinion on every podcast or online or on Twitter or whatever it might be. There's not many jobs that you have that pressure to perform. It's a lot easier talking about the game now than it was playing. No, I think we had good players, good personalities, good characters who dealt with the situation well.
Indeed. And you mentioned the good players. You also had a very good manager. George Burley was named the LMA's Manager of the Year, pipping his fellow Scotsman, Sir Alex Ferguson. See, Burley was there with his right-hand man, Dale Roberts, and Tony Mowbray was in that coaching staff as well. Just how happy were you for George to get that award after so many hard years graft as Ipswich manager? Very, very pleased. I mean, it's always nice when your dad wins an award. So the players used to say about George. He was. I think of all the managers I had, he was the one that worked hardest to improve me as an individual. That spent long on the training ground. Him and Dale and Mogger as well spent longer on the training ground to make me a better individual footballer, because I know I wasn't the most talented footballer that's ever walked the earth. I wasn't the most gifted. Worked incredibly hard at my game, and but there was always things I could improve on, and there was bits of my game that George recognised needed to be better, and he worked hard on improving certain aspects of my game. Had a lot of faith in me, and obviously to make me captain and all those things. He was a brilliant coach, brilliant guy, and really pleased for him, for Dale and Mogger. Obviously Dale sadly no longer with us, and but they were a great part. I go back to it, partnerships. Me and Jim, George and Dale, they were just a great partnership. They complemented each other brilliantly. It was great that they were able to taste that success. Excellent. Yeah, so that was the 2000-2001 Premier League season. Can you believe that was 20 years ago, Matt?
No, scary. Absolutely scary. Time's flown by, absolutely flown by. It's nice to be able to reflect on it look back on it, I wish I could remember more of it. So sorry if my memory doesn't serve me as well as it perhaps could have done, but it's nice to look back on it.
Brilliant. And can we get a Blue Monday exclusive here? Are you available as a free agent ahead of the next League One season?
Yeah, I always got my boots. Mind you, I went to the gym yesterday, hurt my hamstring a little bit, so I'm not going to be fit for Saturday. But
need a pre-season, get pre-season into the legs.
Definitely need a pre-season, crikey.
A few runs around Chantry Park.
I'd absolutely love to be able to put my boots back on. I absolutely would love to. If only. No, we'll be back. Don't worry, we'll be back at some point.
Excellent. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the like button and make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube channel. And in the comments, it would be nice for you to leave your own personal highlight of that brilliant season that Matt's just talked us through. So yeah, thanks again, Matt. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. And hopefully we'll have you on the show with Ipswich as a championship club in the future, Matt.
That'd be nice. Can't wait.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Blue Monday podcast. And thanks to those of you who have kindly supported the channel via Acast or YouTube donations. You can follow us at the usual places on social media, and don't forget to subscribe so that you get our new shows first.